Western stories are a surprisingly intuitive fit for Sonic the Hedgehog. They're often about lonesome heroes who wander from town to town, doing good and then accepting the barest of rewards before moving on. A description that could just as easily be applied to the blue blur. As such, dropping Sonic into a storybook-style adventure in the Old West should have been a simple task. Perhaps even easier than the Greek or Chinese mythologies that are so often brought up when a new storybook title is conceptualized. Unfortunately, metalharbor decided to produce the concept in SRB2, and for as flexible as the game is, Sonic and the Gunslinger pushes it too far. It demands too much, and the game just isn't capable of doing what it needs to do to fulfill it. There's strong potential here, but the execution misses the mark. Sonic and the Gunslinger sees Sonic and a few of his friends dropped into an Old West tale of deception and intrigue. Eggman takes on the role of Wild Bill Hickok, who employs Robert Ford, Fang, to chase down Jesse James, Sonic, a do-gooder in leagues with a notorious Calamity Jane, who is played by Ruse. It's a fun concept, and each character more naturally fits into their personas than they did in previous storybook games. It's also more present than stories in other SRB2 mods, communicated by a few moments of narration at the start of each level. The narration is unfortunately rather hit and miss. Sonic and Eggman are perfect.
Speaking of which, a bounty hunter after me? I don't like the sound of that.
Sonic, you're back? You are supposed to be driven out of town by Fang!
But Fang and Ruse are much weaker. Fang's actor can't quite decide on the direction he wants to play him, even within single sentences.
Right now, I'm heading into town to meet my least favorite client.
While Ruses put so much into making the voice that they then lost the ability to imbue it with any real emotion.
But I found something when I was digging through Eggman's documents.
Worse, the story fails to clarify important details. It flip-flops the entire way through about how real the events taking place are. Some characters are treating the situation as a form of elaborate roleplay, while others are more firmly embodying their personas. Sometimes it's claimed that the events are real, sometimes there are events in a storybook, and then sometimes the events are just in a dream. There's a bizarre tonal shift in the final moments that isn't built up to at all, and it ends on a melancholy note that might not have even been intentional. The language begins to get so contradictory that it loses sight of itself. The ending feels appropriately epic in the moment, but I noticed the gaps left even on my first run, much less my fourth or fifth. To be fair, I wouldn't really recommend that you make a habit of replaying Gunslinger anyway. Despite the 3 playable characters and the ways it tries to make each level distinctive, a combination of linearity and some real low points limits the replay value to a few of the better stages. Mostly the stages where you play as Sonic. He is a real highlight of the pack with a simple moveset that nonetheless can be leveraged for some awesome routing, as well as the consistently best levels with the best set pieces. Ruse and Fang, on the other hand, suffer from quite poor levels. Ruse generally ends up searching for something or other, whether that be buttons or emerald shards, and that's just never been something I enjoy in a Sonic game. No one has ever gotten it quite right, and it ends up being a tedious pace breaker. Fang tries to live up to the Gunslinger in the title, but his mechanics just aren't complex enough to make the concept work. Most of his levels end up being shooting galleries where you have to search for and then destroy something, which always ends up taking ages. The first level in the pack is one of his, and it's a terrible first impression. Once you finally get your controls working, the mod is run by a batch file separate from the main game, so all your controls are reset. You end up having to destroy every single enemy in the level to progress, from enclosed motor bugs to actual swarms of bumblebees. And no, you can't get away with just defeating the hive elemental spawning them. Easily the worst level of the pack, followed closely by his other two levels. Bosses are present in Gunslinger, appearing at regular intervals throughout the story, but unfortunately they suffer from the same problems as Fanged levels, and so are similarly miserable. Almost all of them follow a pattern of defeating every other enemy in the level, usually a set of really tedious ones, before the boss is sealed breaks to let you actually fight them. It plays like that for every character, and while they all have a technique that lets you make it faster, it never elevates it to being good. I'd honestly prefer it if I just had to fight the bosses unchanged, much as I've done that hundreds of times already. Despite the ups and downs of the story and level design, there was one element of Gunslinger that kept me pushing forwards: the art direction. This remains strong from start to finish from both a visual and auditory perspective, and it does stand out from other mods. Textures are generally flatter, more vibrant than those found in the base game, working well with the models used, and the bit rates of my recordings. It was quite charming, and worked surprisingly well in all of the varied locations visited throughout the campaign, from lively carnivals and swampy bayous, to desert waters and plantation farmhouses. The UI is also changed to fit this style, and though the changes are fairly minor in comparison, they are pretty good. Level themes are mostly taken from the usual suspects, mainline Sonic games, and a few third-party games popular with the Nintendo crowd, but there are some deeper cuts as well, and they're the best of the soundtrack. Supersonic's theme has been replaced with a song by The Rin, an artist with barely 100 monthly listeners on Spotify, and it sounds amazing. There's also a couple of the famous cowboy themes, and they're usually used quite well. I always enjoyed hearing what metalharbor would use next, so it's definitely a stronger aspect of the mod. That final point is really the crux of the whole mod. If you just want a Sonic experience set in the Wild West, with all the trappings of that genre and a high production value, then Sonic and the Gunslinger will likely satisfy. Sonic is very fun to play and has a number of fun, if linear levels, that are graced with beautiful art direction and a fantastic soundtrack. The set pieces are wonderful, and coming in at around an hour, it's a compact story that is unlikely to overstay its welcome. There's weaknesses visible even on an initial playthrough, but it isn't terrible. You may well quite enjoy it. Returning to it is the issue, is the tedium of the Fanged levels, and the impotence of the boss fights, and the visibility of the many plot holes, all come together to make it an increasingly doldrum slog. I find myself souring on it further every time I play through it again, as it aims to do things that the game just will not let it do. Any time spent not playing a Sonic is a chore, and that's a significant portion of the mod. Rouge and Fang need a lot of work to become more enjoyable. They do not have the mechanical depth needed to remain fun level after level, much less playthrough after playthrough. I can ultimately recommend Sonic and the Gunslinger, despite my cynicism and all of the points I've made and the negative tone of my review, for a single playthrough at least, but I really doubt that you want to keep playing it beyond that. With that said, thank you for watching today's review. We're sticking with metalharbor for now, as the next review will be on their Tailwinds mod. Until then, I hope you enjoyed the video, tune in next time, and ciao.